Is this the recorder?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Thank
good.
you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
The CLEO Institute, Caroline Lewis, thank you so much. Maybe, yeah, I would love to learn about your work, of your institution. And,
So the CLEO Institute is a non-profit based in Miami, Florida. We're in our 8th year of existence. And CLEO stands for Climate Leadership Engagement Opportunities. So what we try to do is build climate leadership in elected officials and in grassroots communities, in the banking community and the religious community. In every area of our world, we want people to understand the basic science, seriousness, and solutions of climate change. So our goal is to drive climate action. And we want people to make sure they know what they're asking for when they demand climate action. So that's our goal.
And what are some examples of how you engage?
So one of the things we do is our Climate 101 trainings. We have Climate 101 trainings we do with the climate scientists here locally and regionally, and it's 2 days long. And we call it Empowering Capable Climate Communicators. And we do that in partnership with the University of Miami and Dr. Hal Wanless with the Geology Department. It's extremely rich experience, but it's almost too much as a first step for many people who aren't familiar with the climate science. It's like the data coming at you 100 miles an hour. And to me, it's beautiful and it's real, and we have the experts, the IPCC scientists and the National Climate Assessment scientists telling us what they're finding out, and what the models are showing, and what the data. And it's scary, but you know, we have to confront the seriousness in order to really pick the solutions that will have the greatest effect. So we're not opposed to confronting the seriousness of the issue and the doom and gloom, as people say. They say, I don't want to hear the doom and gloom. I said, we all have to hear it. It's the reality. It's only going to get doomier and gloomier. So we have Climate 101 trainings that last a day long instead of 2 days. And we have some that last an hour and a half, where we just go through an interactive sets of stories. I'm a science teacher and a school principal. So I like to work with the scientists to deconstruct the main bullet points so that you understand about heat trapping gases and what parts per million means and what global warming is and all the effects that come with it. So in addition to training people, we also have film screenings and panel discussions. We have forums. We hold town halls with residents and city and community elected leaders and staff to talk about the concerns and the problems that communities have. We also tend to be big on a speakers network where we're trying to get everyone who participates in one of our forums or town halls or panels or whatever, or in our classes, want to be a climate speaker, want to find their voice and share their voice on a piece of climate change. So we have a CLEO Speakers Network that we provide a science coach to the individual so that whatever piece of climate change they want to talk about, we make sure they get it right. So some people only want to talk about ocean acidification, or only about sea level rise, or only about heat and health impacts. So they get to pick the issue, and we make sure their science is correct. I also teach them how to speak to people in a crowd, in a room, without being attacked by saying, I'm not a climate scientist, and I don't understand all of it, but what I am learning is very concerning to me. So let me share with you what I learned, and if you ask me questions I can't answer, I promise to find the answer for you. So it allows novices to attempt to talk about climate change without feeling vulnerable that they're going to get asked something that they can't answer, because none of us knows everything. So those are the means by which we excite people and engage them. And we also have all of these groups that we work with. We have a leadership circle of community leaders, scientists, and mayors and managers who have really taken on our mission and drummed up interest in climate. We have the young professionals that are now calling themselves Generation CLEO.
Nice.
We have cities and municipalities hiring us to do professional development for all their staff, so that everybody who works for the city of Miami or the city of Coral Gables gets a Climate 101 training. So now they're buying into what the city is doing for sustainability and resilience planning. We have a mayor's roundtable lunch where we invite mayors who are doing a lot to sit with mayors who are not doing anything and just talk about what climate planning looks like for them. We have a teachers network of kindergarten to 12th grade teachers across disciplines, across levels, called Climate Across the Curriculum, as to how teachers can bring this topic into the schools and into their classrooms. So we work with a variety of existing groups, and we create new groups. Chambers of Commerce are very interested now in understanding this. And hopefully the health employees of our incredible county, and there's so many from the major hospitals and so on, they need to understand the context of climate change and how that's affecting health changes. So our work is rich, it's deeper, it's broad, but we are really just trying to get people to be able to talk about it so that when they vote or when they don't vote, they know what they're asking for.
And how have you seen changes, if there were some, like regarding those other, like people who have shifted their beliefs and what they assumed might happen is happening?
So one of the things the CLEO Institute does is it frames the issue very clearly for people. So the biggest change we see is the accuracy with which people can talk about the science of climate change and greenhouse gases. The confidence they have in linking the use of fossil fuels and greenhouse gases to sea level rise and ice melts. Not just saying, well, that's happening and I don't know why. And not seeing it as somebody else's problem, but a problem that's here and now. We really do not go after converting people who deny climate change into believing it. Sometimes I guess that happens, but we're really not going after that. What we're doing, they say 75, maybe 80% of America really knows that that's a problem. So we're trying to help those people understand the science, the seriousness, and the solutions, and talk about it. So if there's 20% that says this is a hoax, this is ridiculous, they're not our target audience. The 80% is. But if they show up, we're not going to kick them out. We listen, set them straight, or the audience sets them straight. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, and you as a principal, you work with kids a lot, and you're going to have the high school in here. It's beautiful. So you're very interconnected with how they can learn about it, and how's the new generation working with it.
So my past, I was a school teacher and a school principal, and then I have been out of schools for about 15 years, creating programs to engage thousands of people. So education is a part of me. The last year, the Cushman School has convinced me to help them envision a dream high school. They don't have a high school right now. They end in the 8th grade. So in helping to develop Cushman High School, I got very excited that my two worlds could collide again, where I could be a principal of a dynamic, relevant school and run the CLEO Institute out of that school, so that the students and the teachers get first-hand experience with the climate scientists we work with the engineers, with the way solutions are being discussed and resilience is being built. So it's the base. It will be here at the Cushman School of the CLEO Institute, and we will have a 9th and 10th grade class starting in the fall, and that will grow into 11th grade the year after and 12th grade the year after that.
And have you worked with kids on this? What you described, I guess I assume you already work with a lot of kids. And
so,
how do they
in addition to working with mayors and managers and scientists and chambers of commerce, we have a youth task force of high school and college kids. They are really passionate about climate change, and the more they work with us, the more urgent their passion becomes. They are very motivated. They are a little bit angry, and I encourage that anger because I think we've been complacent too long. Think about elected officials. An elected official, somebody who runs for office, any office, is a public servant, is saying, I want to work on legislation to serve the public. Well, service to the public means keeping us out of harm's way. And keeping us out of harm's way means acting on climate. Not just adapting to the changes that are here and the effects, like installing pumps to pump the water out or raising the roads. Those are adaptation measures we need. But we also need mitigation measures where individually and collectively we're lowering our carbon footprint. We're stopping this crazy emissions of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere because we won't leave the oil, coal, and gas in the ground. So it's really an understanding of the choices we have, the energy choices we have, and to understand that elected officials need to serve the public.
Yes. So that brings to the question, what can somebody do just like now as a very simple kind of offering of tips? What can somebody do on a personal, in their family, in their environmental community, to maybe reduce the potential of increasing sea level rise?
So I get that question a lot. What can the individual do? Because the climate is changing and the effects are becoming more serious and they're advancing more rapidly. Well, the first thing they have to do is to steep themselves in information. They have to understand the basics. They have to know what's causing climate change, greenhouse gases from fossil fuels, and the effects of climate change, not just sea level rise, but saltwater intrusion, which means freshwater vulnerability, which means food vulnerability, intense heat. With that comes health changes. Allergy seasons no longer end. People without air conditioning are in for a wild summer, and every year it's going to get worse. So understanding the scope of the causes and effects of climate change is everybody's immediate responsibility. The second thing you do is act on that knowledge. If you know what's causing it, then make better choices. Support clean energy, support renewable energy. Ask your elected officials to support that. When you purchase goods as a consumer, know who you're purchasing it from. If you're purchasing goods from a company that doesn't care about the environment and is using oil, coal, and gas and is funding climate denial, stop. So being an informed voter and being an informed consumer are the two biggest challenges every one of us faces. And the sooner we do both of those things, the quicker we can turn the engine. So that politically and economically, we're getting away from this dystopic future we're heading for.
And regarding like the effects already, do you have some examples from people who already, have like something happened in their house, a building, or?
So the major effects of climate change that are affecting Miami right now include sea level rise and tidal flooding. And in some of the low-lying areas, the undercarriage of cars are getting eroded by the salt water in the streets. So that's something people are experiencing now, and not everyone lives on Miami Beach that is investing hundreds of millions of dollars to keep the streets dry. They're putting pumps in so that during the king tides, the water is pumped back out away from the streets. So some of the areas without the tax base of Miami Beach don't have that, so the water sits there longer than it maybe should. In addition, populations are being displaced because they can no longer live there. That causes tremendous problems. Then you have those of them that live on high ground. There are pieces of Miami-Dade County that are very low-lying, and there are parts that are on the ridge that are high ground, like 14, 15, 16 feet above sea level. That's like the Rocky Mountains here in Miami, So the people living on that ground are now finding that the developers seem to want their land more and more. And they feel that climate gentrification is accelerating, where they're being encouraged or manipulated, some of them feel, to sell. So they're experiencing that, and that's not always fun. Then we have asthma, the cause of breathing problems increasing tremendously because of the pollution of the gases. Some of these greenhouse gases as well are related to asthma and breathing conditions. We have allergies, allergy seasons, because it's hot year round, the pollen is confused. So the blooming patterns are off. And therefore allergy season is not predictable anymore. It's running into every one of them. People worry about water, freshwater vulnerability. When you look at Florida underneath with this porous limestone, the salt water is coming in and it's displacing our aquifer. In some areas, they need to move the wells like 8 miles inland to try and get fresh water. So at what point do we have to find alternative sources of fresh water, or come up with some serious measures to keep that Everglades nice and healthy, so that it's pushing back against the saltwater intrusion? We have some decisions to make, and we need to do it now. And one of the ways we could do it is by understanding that we are emitters. That if Miami-Dade County doesn't turn its energy usage completely away from natural gas, to stop thinking that natural gas is a bridge fuel, because it really isn't. We have yet to see the real data on just how much dirtier natural gas is than oil and coal. At the point of extraction of the natural gas, there's a lot of greenhouse gas emitted in the form of methane. The actual natural gas that's transported away and used might be cleaner than coal, but the source, if you count all of the pollution, the carbon pollution, coming from fracking and natural gas, is really severe. And I am afraid that people felt that natural gas was a bridge fuel, was something that we could use until we could get the solar and wind industry up to speed, and geothermal. But I'm saying no, we don't have time for that lie. It is a lie, and we need to minimize that oil, coal, and gas usage right now. It needs to stay in the ground. So the big things that we can do is advocate for that. And wind and solar, the biggest spoke in the wheel are the battery storage capacity. That's advancing tremendously. And the number of jobs we're creating with solar, and the cost of solar is dropping. So we have an economy ready to take off. We just need the political and economic will to make it fly, so that we stop saying we can't do it and keep doing what we have been doing that has caused the problem we're facing now.
Are there any tendencies here in Miami-Dade County from the policy-wise and politicians regarding that?
So there are politicians that are really standing up for solar and against fracking. We know that, you know, Florida Power and Light likes to pretend that it's in favor of solar, and they are building more solar farms, which is lovely. But when they say they're changing the current, and less than 1% of our energy portfolio in the entire state is solar, I'm not impressed. So I think there's a game that they're playing with the public to pretend that like they're advocating for it. But they really are just getting the last drop of natural gas that they can from the infrastructure they have built to do that. And I think that needs to stop. I also think nuclear power plants built in harm's way, like Turkey Point, which is so vulnerable to sea level rise and events, is not a smart way to do it. Maybe there's a future with smaller, safer, cleaner nuclear gas generating, nuclear power generating, but what we have now is a nightmare. So the elected officials in the state of Florida who are pushing to stop the fracking, to stop the offshore drilling, and to incentivize solar, and to have all of these mechanisms like the PACE program. Are you familiar with the PACE program? Property Assessed Clean Energy is a program that mayors can vote into for their municipalities or the county, and it allows you to get affordable funding for solar installation in your home and tack it on to your property taxes paid over several years.
Nice.
So you don't have the 60,000 to do it now, but if you fund it and pay it off slowly, and it travels with the house and the sale of the house.
Nice. And how can people get informed of it? Like,
they need to look it up. They need to make sure that their mayors and managers are signing up for PACE and allowing both homes and businesses to be a part of the PACE program. We have quite a few cities. We call it the Green Corridor, all the way down as far as Cutler Bay and Palmetto Bay, and all the way up to the city of Miami that have PACE programs. We also have solar co-ops being developed now, where homeowners in groups of 20 or 30 are getting together to increase their capacity to get good deals on solar panels for homes and so on. So there's a lot of ingenuity happening by both elected officials and by residents, and I want to see more of that happening.
Yes. And what are some other examples of maybe buildings which just recently been constructed, or communities where it's like some people could go, maybe see as an example of inspiration?
So some of the examples of inspiration that showcase adaptation measures would be in the big cities like Miami Beach and maybe Fort Lauderdale. Coral Gables is trying some of that now. City of Miami is trying as well. But the things that are happening, like Miami Beach, they've elevated some of the main roads. They've raised them several feet so that the flooding isn't as intense. But in doing that, there are unintended consequences. Like the buildings on either side of the elevated road, some of them can't get insurance because they're being declared basements. They're surrounded by walls. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. There is great discussion on building and zoning policies that need to change so that we don't keep business as usual, putting up buildings like we used to, understanding that we have to have some ability to mitigate the worst effects. That's slow in coming, but at least it's on the drawing board now. We've also had successes 2 or 3 years ago when the Miami-Dade County budget came out. There was not a line item in it for sea level rise and addressing all of the recommendations that were in the 4-county RCAP, that were in the Greenpin Plan, that were in all of these studies and task forces that come together to look at the issue. They make recommendations. So we got tired of saying we don't want any more recommendations. We want funding to implement the high priority recommendations. So about, I would say 20 grassroots and nonprofit and university communities got together, and we showed up at the Miami-Dade County budget hearing. And we had a series of speakers speak out about how absurd it is to be ground zero for climate change and sea level rise and not have a budget that addresses that. So long story short, we spoke, we came back to the second meeting, they had found $300,000 and they hired a climate resilience officer. So progress.
Nice.
Enough?
Beautiful.
No, but progress. So last year, when the budget came out, the whole thing was called resilience. It was resilience in every corner of it. Little bit greenwashing, you know, but I think they're getting to the right place where it's no longer just making the recommendations. It's forcing our elected officials to act on the recommendations and to write them in such a way that we have a timeline for funding and implementing them.
Nice. Oh, congratulations. That's beautiful. And then regarding information, what is like maybe a few sites, or I mean, besides of course CLEOinstitute.org, what other sites and institutions can you recommend for people to immediately go online or to call and to get informed or engaged?
So I would say that the in terms of knowledge of climate change, skepticalscience.com is one of my favorite websites. It is made by climate scientists for other climate scientists and for the lay public. So anybody could type in the search box any issue they want, like how did volcanoes affect climate change, or has the climate always been changing, or you know, how much has the sea level risen? And they will give you answers at an advanced and at a basic level with reports and documentation to back up their answers. So for content, I love that site. And we listed on CLEO's site. For action, what to do about it, I think the CLEO Institute is helpful, but I think looking at the regional climate action plan for the 4 counties in Southeast Florida is a good place to go. Looking at our Miami-Dade County Office of Resilience site to see what they're doing, the Office of Emergency Management, the green print, the plan we have for Miami-Dade County to sort of reduce our greenhouse gases and get ready for the worst that is unavoidable. Those are good sites for people to dig into, to see where there's hope, where there's action. And then there's this group of us called the Miami Climate Alliance that helped plan the first climate march here in Miami 3 years ago. And it's a coalition of nonprofits, colleges, universities, all sorts of interested groups that really come together to promote advocacy for climate action and to make sure that our elected officials understand how vulnerable we are. And most importantly, how vulnerable our most vulnerable people are. So the climate justice lens is something we've been pushing. You know, here in Miami, in the county, we have just under 3 million people living here. It's a lot. About 1 million people easily are right at or below the poverty level. Now just think of if an emergency happens, the worst scenario, we get hit by a major storm, a hurricane. We've been playing hurricane roulette for about 11 years now. We've been lucky. But let's suppose we get hit and the sewer system is compromised and the streets are flooded and there's no electricity. Well, those of us that can get out will get out and go spend some time somewhere else with family or wherever. And those without safety nets are stuck right here. And when toilets can't flush and food and water is not available, you have a crisis on your hands. When you think of heat and the increasing heat every summer, I worry about heat waves. So when you think about heat waves, you think about, of these 1 million people with very few resources, how many of them don't have air conditioning in their homes? And where do they go? So the stories that come out during the town halls that we have and the listening sessions really concern me, that we're not understanding just how vulnerable the poor are, those without assets. We're all vulnerable, but that vulnerability is like quadruple for those without resources. So that's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's incredible. And what is so the next weeks or months this year, what have you planned? What's going on?
So right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to get action. So the idea of action is, so we have gone into several under-resourced communities and neighborhoods. And we've done 3 things. We have listened, asked them what their concerns are, what they know, what they don't know, what they want to know. We've helped them form an agenda for a town hall with elected officials and staff from the city and the county, and hold those town halls to confront the issues. And we've done Climate 101 trainings for them and encouraged them to be climate speakers. But what they're telling us, they're concerned about being the next Katrina. They want better emergency management planning. And we're bringing the emergency management department together with these neighborhoods, because sometimes they don't even know what resources emergency management has to offer. So letting the people know what the government has is a good idea. And letting the government understand what else the people need is a good idea. They also don't want to be told what we're going to go and do for them. They want to be at the table when we're planning the solutions and talking about the concerns and the vulnerability. So having a committee that doesn't have these under-resourced populations represented is not a good idea. They're very concerned about heat and health. They're very concerned about gentrification if they're on high ground. They're very concerned about flooding if they're on low ground. They're very concerned that our transportation, public transportation, is so compromised that when they have to relocate away from where they've lived and commute back to jobs, the quality of life is diminished. So what CLEO is focused on is, okay, we've heard the concerns. What are tangible solutions? And what could we, as a community and as a government, do to address those concerns? So we're working with the Center for American Progress to have a solutions summit in a couple weeks' time, where we bring together leaders at the resident level, community leaders, and experts on climate and elected officials to talk about, here are the concerns, let's brainstorm solutions and prioritize them. So the Solutions Summit should result in a 2-page paper that sort of gives us a script as to what's the best way to keep people out of harm's way now, and what should we be thinking of in the short term and then in the long term. That's exciting to me.
Nice. And what is there student teachers somewhere, or people with organizations or just companies, can they approach you or like other organizations to ask to like speakers to come in, or like people who can inform them and connect them with the right scientists?
So we get a lot of requests to have speakers come. So we always ask, what are you looking for? Are you looking for an ice expert or a sea level rise expert? Are you looking for an educator? Are you looking for the big picture? Are you looking for solutions only in geoengineering? And we have an incredible team in Miami-Dade County and as part of the CLEO Leadership Circle that we could draw from. So we could put together a panel pretty quickly. Our Climate 101s, I usually teach it, or one of the staff teaches it. We kind of have done all the research and simplified it, but we often end those with a panel of experts to answer any deeper questions that might come up. So yes, we get a lot of calls from schools and colleges and businesses and law firms to say, how do we go about this? And we work with them.
Nice. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. And I